Audio. Have you ever met someone who looked down on you? Not with harsh words, but through their eyes, their tone, or the way they spoke, as if your presence wasn't even worth acknowledging. You can feel the blood in your veins begin to heat up. A part of you wants to react instantly, to respond, to show them that you're not someone to be underestimated. And perhaps there were moments when you did react that way, not out of pride or rivalry, but simply to protect yourself. The truth is, no one can take away your worth unless you hand it to them. The contempt of others doesn't diminish your value. It only reveals who they truly are. If you can stay calm in the face of provocation, you won't just keep your dignity, you'll reclaim mastery over yourself. Today, we'll explore 7 Stoic principles, timeless ways to maintain your dignity without raising your voice, to master your emotions without having to fight. And if you too are seeking the strength to stand tall in a turbulent world, make sure to subscribe and walk this journey with us. Now, let's begin with the first, and perhaps the most important lesson. Number 1. Control the first impulse. When someone offends you, your first instinct is to react. That's natural. Because deep down, every human being longs to be acknowledged and to protect their sense of self. But the Stoics understood that the very moment between the insult and your reaction is where true strength is tested. Many people fail not because they act wrongly, but because they lack the clarity to pause before they act. When someone says something that hurts you, give yourself a pause, just a few seconds. Take a deep breath, observe the feeling rising in your chest, and ask yourself, will this reaction make me better or worse? Most of the time, the answer is clear. It will only drain your calm, your energy, and your control. Seneca once said, "Anger is a brief madness. Every time you lose your temper, you lose your reason, the very thing that makes you human." The Stoic does not stay silent out of weakness. They stay silent because they know that a single word spoken in anger can destroy what calmness could have saved. Train yourself to pause before you react, because in that pause, you're not just controlling your emotions, you're reclaiming mastery over your life. Number 2. Observe, don't absorb. Not everything others throw at you is worth holding on to. Sometimes insults aren't truly directed at you. They come from the pain within them. A peaceful person does not need to hurt others. It's an insecure mind that must put someone down to feel worthy. See it as an observer, not a participant. When someone gets angry, mocks, or insults you, don't let their energy enter your space. Watch it as if you were standing on the riverbank, simply observing the current flow by. The Stoics understood that self-respect begins with choosing what deserves to remain in your mind. When you observe instead of absorb, you preserve your calm. You don't carry their anger home with you, nor let your mind be occupied by their negativity. Sometimes, the best response is not to respond at all, but to stay above it. And you'll notice, when your mind no longer gets pulled into their chaos, every insult becomes much smaller compared to the inner strength you're building. Number 3. Strategic silence. Say nothing, win everything. There are times when your greatest strength lies not in what you say, but in the moment you choose to remain silent. When someone insults, blames, or deliberately tries to provoke you, your first instinct is to respond. But reacting in that moment rarely helps you win. It only drags you into their mud. The Stoics understood that silence is not surrender. It's a strategy. When you stay silent, you force others to confront their own noise. You deny them what they seek, your reaction, your confusion, your defense. Silence is how you refuse to give them control over your emotions. It's like when someone throws a ball at a wall. The ball simply bounces back. They speak, they attack, they provoke. But because you don't engage, the energy returns to them. And that's when they begin to feel the emptiness of their own actions. I remember once being harshly criticized in front of many people. They spoke, laughed, and tried to humiliate me. I simply held my head high, calm, silent, and without justification. When they finally stopped, the room fell completely still. And in that silence, everyone could see clearly who was truly confident and who was desperately trying to prove something. Not long after, that same person came to me quietly and said, "You were really calm." I smiled, because they didn't understand that it wasn't calmness, it was intention. Strategic silence is the art of soft power. It doesn't wound, it doesn't create conflict, yet it compels others to change their attitude. Each time you choose silence over reaction, you're telling the world, "I don't need to argue to know who I am." Silence may unsettle others, but for those who have mastered themselves, it is the most powerful weapon of all. The next time someone attacks you, don't rush to react. Let them speak. Let them run out of words. And when there's nothing left for them to throw at you, they'll realize that your silence was the greatest victory. Number 4, stop explaining. We all have the natural desire to be understood. When we're judged or misunderstood, our first instinct is to explain, to prove that we're not wrong. But what the Stoics realized is that the more you try to explain yourself, the more you lose confidence in who you are. Those who truly want to understand you will observe with their eyes, not need to be convinced by your words. And those who have already decided to judge you, no matter what you say, will only hear what they want to hear. The more you justify yourself, the deeper you fall into the cycle of seeking validation. And in doing so, you unconsciously hand others the power to define your worth. At that point, every word you speak no longer serves to clarify, but to beg for approval. And in the process, you forget the most important truth. You don't need anyone's permission to live your life authentically. I remember once when I decided to leave a stable job to pursue my own path. When people found out, everyone asked, "Why would you leave such a good position?" Or, "Aren't you afraid you'll regret it?" At first, I tried to answer every question, to make them understand. But the more I spoke, the more I felt like I was asking for their permission to live my own life. One day, when someone asked again, I simply smiled and said, "Because I want to." The conversation ended there, and I realized, sometimes, silence is the strongest affirmation of your conviction. The Stoic does not live to please others. They don't need the crowd to understand them, only themselves. They know that actions carry more weight than words. Because in the end, not everyone will understand you, but those who need to will see it. Not through your explanations, but through the way you live. So next time someone demands an explanation for your decision, remember, you owe them nothing. Smile, walk away, and let time answer for you. Because the way you live each day is the clearest explanation of all. Number 5, walk away with dignity. There are relationships and conversations where, no matter how hard you try, respect simply doesn't exist. The Stoic does not cling to places where they no longer belong. They understand that walking away is not weakness. It is the act of someone who knows their own worth. You don't walk away to win. You walk away to keep your peace. We are often bound by the desire to be understood, to be loved, to be validated. But sometimes, the harder you try, the more you lose yourself in the effort to prove it. When someone doesn't respect you, you don't always have to fix it or convince them to see you differently. Because respect cannot be forced. It only exists when it is mutual. Walking away doesn't mean slamming doors. It means choosing to move toward the light, to where you can breathe freely and no longer have to strain for acceptance. The Stoics taught that nothing is more valuable than peace of mind. If being close to someone costs you your peace, then leaving is not abandonment. It's an act of self-love. I once knew a woman who stayed in a relationship where she was constantly belittled. She believed that if she was patient enough, he would change. But as the years passed, things only grew worse. One day, she looked at herself in the mirror and realized the eyes staring back had lost their spark. That day, she packed her things and left. No tears, no anger, just silence. When I asked if she regretted it, she said, "No, I only regret not leaving sooner." That sentence made me realize that sometimes walking away is how you finally return to yourself. Walking away is not an ending. It's a beginning of freedom, of self-respect, of living a life where you no longer have to ask for the right to be at peace. Sometimes, the strongest action is not to react, but to turn away and walk with dignity. Number 6. Keep your distance. Not everyone deserves a place in your space. There are people who, even knowing your boundaries, still cross them through their words, their attitude, or their repeated disrespect. In those moments, distance is not coldness. It's an act of self-respect. Keeping your distance isn't about turning your back. It's about protecting your peace from unhealthy energy. Some people show up only when they need something from you, then disappear when you need them most. If you don't learn to step back, you'll keep sacrificing your peace just to maintain a relationship that's no longer healthy. The Stoics understood that peace cannot exist in places where you constantly have to fight for acceptance. I once worked with a colleague who always tried to belittle others. She complained, criticized, and never admitted her own mistakes. At first, I remained polite and tried to stay friendly. But over time, I noticed that every conversation with her left me feeling heavy. So I chose a different approach. I still greeted her kindly, but I limited my interactions. I didn't make any announcements. I simply withdrew my energy. And interestingly, when I became quiet, she stopped trying to create tension. Maintaining distance isn't about rejecting anyone. It's about honoring your own limits. When you stop forcing yourself to stay where you're being hurt, you send a powerful message. I deserve peace. You don't need anyone to understand it, nor do you need to explain it. Because those who truly understand you would never ask you to break your boundaries just to make them comfortable. Sometimes distance is a gift. It allows you to see more clearly, breathe more easily, and love yourself more healthily. Distance is not a wall. It's a boundary that protects your peace. Number 7. Move forward with peace. After you've learned to keep your distance, the next thing you must do is move forward, without looking back. Not to forget someone, but to remind yourself that life waits for no one. You've fallen, been hurt, and held on to things that no longer belong to you. But what truly matters isn't that you stood up. It's that you didn't let the pain turn you into someone else. You carry no bitterness, no need to prove anything. You simply move on, calmly, with the quiet strength of someone who understands that pain, too, is a part of growth. The Stoics believed that the past should only be kept as a lesson. Every wound is a step, every loss a foundation upon which you become stronger. And if you are brave enough to face what once broke you, you'll realize it's the cracks themselves that made you deeper, calmer, and more steadfast in what you believe. Some people leave your life not because they are bad or because you weren't good enough, but because your paths have simply diverged. Maybe they once misunderstood you or disrespected you, but they still serve their purpose, to help you recognize the value of respect and peace. And when the lesson is complete, your task is not to hold on, but to move on. Keep your head high and your eyes forward, because only when you look ahead can you truly see your path. You don't need to prove anything, nor look back to be understood. Just keep living in alignment with the calm you found after the storm. Walk on, not to forget, but to grow. Because in the end, the greatest victory is not over anyone else, but over the weaker version of who you once were. Keep your distance, let go, and then move on. 3 actions that may seem simple, yet they require a long journey to truly understand and embody. Because maturity doesn't come from being stronger than others. It comes from knowing yourself deeply, from recognizing what's worth holding on to and what's meant to be released. Today, you've learned how to protect your peace, through distance, through firmness, and through the choice not to react. You've walked through the presence of those who disrespected you, through old wounds, and realized that sometimes silence is the most powerful response of all. If something in this journey resonated with you, hit like and share your thoughts below, so these values can reach more people who might need them. And if you wish to continue nurturing that clarity and inner strength, subscribe and walk with us on this path. This journey may not be easy, but it will surely lead you to a place where, each passing day, you no longer have to search for peace, because you've already found it within yourself.